Previously we've seen how to trade securities, what are the best places to put them in, and so on. But it'd sure be nice if maybe we could keep track of when and where the monies go. Let's start with stock dividends, often paid 4 times a year. And, well, there's the announcement date, which may or may not be a surprise, and the payment date, but in between is an ex-dividend date. And that happens to be a day before the record holder date. That's the date which we have on record who held it. And on the ex-dividend date, the stock should drop by the amount of the dividend. And if there are some stop orders or limit orders, they're adjusted accordingly. And of course, here's an example. Let's say you have a $1.75 announced on April 6th for payment September 30th. To record holders of June 15th. Well, the ex-dividend date is June 14th. It's now 1 day instead of what it used to be 2 days. And on that date, the stock should drop by $1.75. Okay, here's one for you. U.S. stocks often gets what's called a qualified dividend treatment by the IRS. And that for most payers, that's 15% instead of 24%. So if maybe you're in California, you get a tax rate of 9% tacked on, well, that's equivalent to paying 1/4 instead of about 1/3, giving you 4.5% instead of 4% on a 6% return. And heads up, this is not in any retirement account, only your cash personal account. Let's talk about traded stock options as opposed to your personal ones. And, the broker loves to try and sell them to you. That's why they call them brokers. They make you broker. Let's talk about instead selling them to someone else on a security you already own. It's called covered call writing. And this is regarded as generally safe and available to just about anybody in any account. They are for 100 shares. So while they're priced per share, they're times 100, priced at $5 or 2.5, depending, in ETFs, those exchange traded funds, which are mutual funds that trade as stocks in multiples, usually of $1. You probably want to sell out of the money, meaning no intrinsic value, call options, and generally you want to go further in time. And while they have no intrinsic value because they're out of the money, they're usually priced as a function of the square root of time, volatility, interest rates, and because they're out of the money, you probably want to go a little bit further out. And here's another heads up. Those ETFs, the mutual funds that trade as stocks, they get an extra 15 minutes to trade, and you can't do any margin on these. And you might want to keep that ratio of 100 to 1, which means you don't want to reinvest dividends, and also noting that they don't diversify, and you probably could use the income. Bonds now, corporate and government, are always priced, transacted, quoted in 100% of face value, while many corporate bonds have $1,000 face, trading in 8s, that's $1.25. And you can usually buy those with 35% on margin. Government bonds are often 10,000 face, trading in 30 seconds, and that's a little bit over $3 and some change. If you do sell, particularly a corporate bond in between those payment dates, which are twice a year at half the amount, or maybe even government municipal bonds, not recommended, is you'll have maybe an accrual of interest, which is computed on a 30-day month between payments. Mutual funds, unlike all of these other securities, cannot take limit orders, that's buying and selling at a better price, or stop orders at a worse price, trying to get in and out of a burning fire or in front of the line. They use into the close prices, which means you have settlements buying in dollars because you don't know the amount, and selling in units of 100ths because, again, you don't know the dollar amount at the end of the day. As to your pension funds, notice that the retirement fund is a delay to the tax, so you might want to consider the present value of when that's due. Here I use the rule of 72. You know that 6% times 12 years made 72, so I know it's a half. So I'm going to take half that tax rate, in this case of 6%, making it 5%. The traditional and the Roth IRAs, if you do the math, are really kind of similar. Noting that if you get a lower tax rate at the end, you actually probably be better off with a traditional IRA. And of course, do note that's setting aside maybe 50% more with a Roth.